unsure whether it was the US forces that targeted the Iran-backed PMF base. But there has been an initial report that has come in minutes after 4 rockets struck 2 US assets, one in Balad Air Base, which is a base that houses US troops, houses US contractors, US assets and US planes. That base was struck. We don't have details on whether there were any casualties there. A second attack that is now being reported also from the Green Zone, which also, by the way, is very close to the Iraqi parliament and the US embassy. The US embassy, we are told, was the target of that attack. Not sure whether any of these missiles struck the US embassy, but we do know that the US embassy has been completely evacuated of all personnel, which is the standard protocol in a situation like this. On the middle of your screens, the statement of intent from Iran. The red flag being raised by one of Iran's biggest mosques, hinting at a war, or at least a statement of intent from Iran that they wanted revenge for the killing of their General Soleimani. Visuals on the left of your screens. That attack was outside the Baghdad International Airport. Let me go across also to Major Gaurav Arya, who's joining us on the phone line as we track the developments live here on Republic TV. Shavan is also live, and Major Gaurav Arya is also joining us live. Major Gaurav Arya, picking up more details of a strike on an Iranian-backed base at the Syrian-Iraqi border. And of course, we will continue to get such updates, because we also saw those choppers hovering over the skies in Baghdad, telling you that there was action, though there are very little details available as of now on whether US retaliated.
Well, Niranjan, I'll straight away go to Major Gaurav Arya for the latest. Now, just before I do that, this is the information that's coming in with regards to the airstrikes on the Iranian-backed Popular Mobilization Forces on the Iraqi-Syrian border. Major Gaurav Arya, Iran made it absolutely clear that this is going to be a hard retaliation that is going to take place. That's what is panning out at this point in time. Yes. Take our viewers through what we do know in terms of the strikes that have taken place so far.
Shavan, first of all, you're very right. It is almost that Iran said when they put up those red flags on the mosques, they declared that this was an act of war and they were going to retaliate. Now, what is happening is that, the Green Zone, as everybody's aware, is the most highly protected and safe area in all of Iraq. Now, it's in Baghdad, near the airport. Now, what is happening is that after the killing of Qasem Soleimani, what has happened is that another Shia leader was inside there and he was also killed. Now, this retaliation will keep on taking place through proxies. It will keep on taking place through proxies. I do not envision a scenario where the US and Iran will go directly head-to-head in a case of a conventional war, because Iran will avoid that, whatever the rhetoric coming out of Tehran may be. But at the same point in time, it cannot be seen, the regime, the Ayatollah regime cannot be seen as weak in front of its own people. It is going to retaliate, and it might end up, and I'm taking a leap of faith when I say this, but it might end up targeting Israel also. This is what Iran has always planned in the past.
Well, very important point, Major Gaurav Arya, because when it comes to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, their footprint, even as far as New Delhi is concerned, this is what President Trump had also said, that New Delhi attacks that were basically planned in New Delhi and London, referring to the 2012 attack in Israel. So it's quite evident right now where it is going. As Major Gaurav Arya also pointing out, Israel could also be part of it. Israel could also come into it, because it's been in the past also. But, talking about what has happened today, this is something, you were talking about the Green Zone. So let me also, Major Gaurav Arya, both of us can actually show this. This is the map, if you can show. Major Gaurav Arya, just explain it. What's the importance of targeting? Because back in America, they call this as one of the largest embassies that is in place. Targeting this is going to create a massive ripple, and that's what we are looking at.
Absolutely. Shavan, when you see this entire area of the Green Zone, Iraqi parliament, and then this here is the US embassy complex. Now, any embassy, there are manifestations and there are meanings to this. The meaning is that US embassy complex here inside the Green Zone, like any other embassy or high commission in the world, is sovereign US territory. You attack the US embassy, you're giving Trump a handle at the time when he's being impeached, or when impeachment is in progress, you're giving Trump a handle to say that US soil has been attacked and this is an act of war. That is what is happening.
It's very important, because this is exactly what President Trump was also saying, that you know, they were planning, they were plotting. This is what Qasem Soleimani was doing. And the State Department statement, Major Gauravaria, I'll just quote, and I'll want you to also put this into perspective, because this becomes very important. This is what exactly US State Department had to say. They are saying General Soleimani was actively developing plans to attack American diplomats and service members in Iraq throughout the region. That is why they're saying, President Trump was saying that we had to go ahead with this. But back home, the audience have also questioned his entire act, saying this is, they are drawing a parallel to what President Bill Clinton had also done, ordering those airstrikes as far as Iraq is concerned. But coming back to this, what next perhaps you're looking from the United States of America's point of view? It is also election time there, and many would say that this is something that one was doing in order to avoid the impeachment proceedings, because this is a national security matter.
Shravan, I won't put anything beyond Trump. Trump is unstable, as we all know. He can do anything, and he's a person who's very clingy as far as power is concerned. Now, I think what is going to happen tomorrow, it's the morning in the US of A right now as we speak. I think the world powers are going to jump in. There are going to be people clamoring for peace. Nobody wants this conflict. Trump may want it, but nobody else wants this conflict, Shravan. That's very clear. Iran cannot afford it. You're going to have China speak to Iran, you're going to have India speak to America, and you're going to have the Europeans going absolutely nuts about this, wanting this thing to stop, because if this gets out of hand, the first thing that's going to be impacted is oil. The first thing.
That's exactly what even the UAE.
Yes.
UAE was actually saying that it is time that, you know, bring in some restraint, exercise restraint, because it's going to create a lot of problem. It is going to create a lot of problem, as you rightly pointed out, oil. I'll just like to also quote the Iran's foreign minister. Now, this is roughly about 24 hours ago. He's basically called President Trump an arrogant clown, masquerading as a diplomat, claimed people were dancing in the cities of Iraq. Now, this is what Iran's foreign minister had to say. And very important line, Major Gauravaria, you should also take note of it, where he says, end of US malign presence in West Asia has begun. Now, if you just look at President Trump's coming to power, saying that withdrawal of troops would take place in the Middle East, to what it is at the end of his tenure. How do you essentially look at it? Because in terms of security, it's also going to have massive ramifications as far as India is also concerned. Let's not discount the fact that it is, this entire thing will have its own impact as far as India is concerned.
See, Trump has been, I would say, partially successful as far as the withdrawal of troops is concerned. Troops were withdrawn from Afghanistan. Now you have certain components of training troops, the special forces, some artillery troops, etc., some administrative troops. However, this whole thing of killing General Soleimani has opened a can of worms, literally a Pandora's box. Now, if this thing gets out of hand, Shravan, I don't think US will have any other option but to put in troops in that region, more troops in that region. Because Iran, it's a very emotive thing for Iran. It's a very emotional thing. Putting up those red flags on mosques, yes, calling it an act of war. Actually, Iran has the capability and the mindset to do it. And the way they do it, as I'm saying again and again, in the past, they have threatened. Whenever things with America got hot, they said, we'll throw the Jews into the sea. That has been their official line, to throw the Jews into the sea. They're saying that we will attack Israel. That is what Iran has always stood up for. And most importantly, the single most important factor is that today the Iraqi, there are strains within Iranian society also. There are people who are on the streets who are protesting. A strong message has to be passed to those people who are protesting on the streets of Iran that the Khomeini leadership has not lost his power. It's a power play between Trump and the Khomeini regime.
Well, exactly what Major Gauravaria was also pointing out, Niranjan. The Ayatollah at this point in time will certainly not want to be seen as weak. It is very important catering to the domestic audience there. We have seen the massive protests, people coming out on the streets as far as Qasem Soleimani is concerned, because, many would say he was a revered figure back in Iran, and many, of course, divisive in nature, but at the end of the day, the kind of information or the kind of comments that came in from Iran saying that you have basically targeted a national hero. So it is going to have its own ramifications, and that's what we are looking at. But as Major Gauravaria was pointing out, it's early morning right now in the United States of America, closely being followed. But go ahead.
Yeah, Shravan, I just wanted to bring in a very, very interesting point from the point of view of India. There have been protests in the Kashmir Valley in which they had Soleimani's posters. There have been even before I knew who Soleimani was, I mean, I'd heard his name randomly, but I didn't know he was such an important figure. There are posters in Dras, which is a Shia majority, this thing now in the Union Territory of Ladakh. So this guy is a hero as far as Shias are concerned. He's a hero, and they're coming out on the streets. This will have ramifications everywhere.
Well, just to add one line to it, Niranjan, not just Kashmir, we saw protests actually taking place in Uttar Pradesh also. So as far as the Shia population is concerned, massive protests have, we have basically seen in the last 24 hours, where we have seen that as far as United States of America is concerned, it remains to be seen how they are going to essentially respond. Right now, the situation remains extremely volatile and fluid.
Iran has retaliated and the story is getting bigger. We're taking a short break at this point. On your screens right now, the statement of intent from Iran on the right of your screens as it raised the red flag to declare emergency. As we speak, there is also breaking news coming in of Iran and its Prime Minister declaring 3 days of mourning. Iranian Prime Minister has declared 3 days of national mourning for what it calls victims of the US act of terror. On the left of your screens, US choppers over the skies in Baghdad, minutes after rockets, Katyusha rockets and rocket launchers struck US assets. We're taking a short break on that note.